Why does every recipe I try need 18 ingredients, including a jar of something paste I'll never use again, but will sit in my fridge for 9 months? I just want dinner in the oven, fast. That's why I love Blue Apron's new one-pan assemble and bake meals. They send you fresh ingredients that are already chopped. All you do is put it all together and bake. That's it. No chopping, no weird leftovers, just delicious, easy-to-make meals. Get 20% off your first 2 orders with code APRON20. Terms and conditions apply. Visit blueapron.com/terms for more.
David Moyes says, hopefully, United will only be out of the Champions League for a year, and they'll be trying their very best to get back in it.
We did make it difficult for Bayern, as Moyes was so proud of having done.
For about 57 minutes and 30 seconds, we did.
Yeah, we will hopefully try and have a good crack at getting back into Europe. I strongly suspect we'll be back in the Champions League the season after next, but it's pretty shocking that it's come to this already.
Yeah, in any measure possible, it's a disastrous position for United to be in. Not losing to Bayern in the quarterfinals of the Champions League, because frankly anyone could have done that, of course, although, and we'll get on to this, the manner in which United chose to lose was less than heroic, despite the spin from the club. But the real disaster, of course, is United's league form, which leaves the club likely to finish 6th and therefore out of the Champions League, although possibly in the Europa League, and I think that's more of a disaster than actually not qualifying for the Champions League. So Thursday nights on ITV4 is likely to be United's reward for that particular one next season. And then, as you said, I think you put a piece up on the Bleacher Report. 20 reasons to sack David Moyes. I was sure you put a piece up on the Bleacher Report before, which was like 15 reasons to sack David Moyes. It's apparently increased over the years.
No, it was 15 reasons to stay positive about David Moyes, and that was one of the hardest 2 hours of my life coming up with that. The 20 reasons to sack him was a bit of an unpleasant thing to write, but it, funnily enough, came a little more naturally.
You loved it. Don't lie to me. Don't lie to me. Anyway, so look, it's season over, right? There's nothing to play for now. Let's forget all the post-Bayern. It will come good. We're determined to have a strong finish to the season and all of this. This is the season done with. If we finish 6th from here on in, I suppose that will be a decent end to the season, because we'll get a few results. I don't think we're going to catch Arsenal, Everton for a Champions League place. Probably won't catch Everton for 5th either, especially given that we have to go to Goodison Park in a week and a bit's time. So there you go. We can start the post-mortems, and frankly, it's been awful.
Won't somebody please think of the podcasters? What are we supposed to talk about every week between now and the end of the season? We can't just go on about how disastrous David Moyes has been every week for an hour.
Oh, we could give it a bloody good shot. No, you know what we can talk about? And before we get on to the Bayern game, let's do this chronologically, shall we? We can talk about each week coming up the magic of Mata, Kagawa and Januzaj. Please, can we talk about that each week? Whether it happens or not, because it probably won't. But Ashley Young going off in the 18th minute at St James's Park. And we had Januzaj on the right and Mata in the centre and Kagawa on the left. In theory, check out their heat maps, because I'm not sure any of them actually played in one specific position. And it was magic, wasn't it?
Absolutely, totally and utterly fantastic. And utterly depressing as well. That's the thing. It was a very peculiar combination of joyous and really miserable to see what they could do when they've been let off the leash. The way United should have been playing all season, the way we'll only ever play when players are injured or being rested or have a slightly poorly ickled toe that's keeping them out of that game.
Yeah. Well, no, this is a very relevant point, isn't it? Because David Moyes was forced into playing this trio of players. In fact, he didn't start that trio. And he's been very reluctant to play Kagawa this season. He's been very reluctant to play Mata in the centre until he had to. And, it's almost by accident that the three came together to give United a completely different way of playing. Now, United was still pretty direct, actually. A lot of balls going from back to front. But into the final third, and the team actually played some football. And, instead of lumping it aimlessly into the box, because none of those three are apt to do that. Of the three, it's only Januzaj who really would be keen to get a crossing, and he was playing on the right nominally anyway. So they want to play some football. And they certainly did have some fantastic goals from United.
Absolutely stunning. Also, Hernandez with an excellent performance. He linked up brilliantly with those three. And
I think he really helped, actually. I think he was key, and I'm not sure that we'd have got the same performance if Rooney had been up front. Hernandez just more dynamic, moving more. And, look, the all-round game isn't the same, sure, but his movement off the final defender, the deepest defender, is superb, and he gave Mata, Kagawa and Januzaj an option all the time.
Absolutely, and just every single one of those goals was beautiful. There wasn't one that wasn't. I mean, that first one, Mata goal, I've just quite literally got a bit of a shiver down my spine. The control, the composure, just really, really great. Oh, that wasn't the first one, was it? The first one was the free kick. Well, that was flipping amazing as well. And then you had the lovely interplay between Kagawa and Hernandez. And then for the last one, well, that was some serious Mata Januzaj action, wasn't it? A 1-2 with the deftest, most beautifully weighted back heel you'll ever see, and a fine finish from Januzaj. Actually, a very fine finish, very intelligent to sort of low and to the keeper's right.
Well, the funny thing afterwards was that Moyes said what he saw on the pitch was some very good technical players, and it was almost as if he resented it. And, I can't think of any other way of presenting this. I don't have an agenda particularly.
I do.
I know you do. As a man, I find it hard to respect David Moyes as a coach. I never did. But I'm not trying to spin a negative just for the sake of it. But the fact that came out as if he really resented having to say that. It was unmistakable, and that's the way he presented it. And, it's some absolutely beautiful goals, but it wasn't the way David Moyes' teams play. And, I had to say I find this very frustrating, but I have this argument over and over and over again when people on Twitter say, he's seen the light. Nope. Just look at 10 years of David Moyes in the Premier League. There's a way that his teams like to play. He likes to exploit space, as in the ball in front of the player, into areas of space. He likes to split his midfield as wide as possible, which results in United playing very direct football. And this was everything that David Moyes did not try to play at Everton or United. And, I just got the sense that it was the players that done it, and not David Moyes.
Absolutely. And, I was joking when I said I had an agenda. I have a thing I would love to see happen, but I'm actually not looking for things to dislike about Moyes. When I said I didn't enjoy writing the Moyes out 20 things that should get him the sack thing, it was true. It's genuinely uncomfortable for me to be sort of that critical and that negative, because it's just not my nature. But what is in my nature is to analyse what I see in front of me and what I hear, and everything I see and hear from Moyes screams he's out of his depth and he's incompetent, and the best case scenario is bad. It was something you said to me about, okay, we finish fourth next season. That's a massive improvement from Moyes. He probably earns another season doing that. But then we have already got to the point of accepting mediocrity. Unless we're saying, well, we're going to sack him the season after that for finishing third or whatever. Anyway, after that Newcastle game, Jay from the Red Mancunian podcast at RFFH tweeted he's going to give Rooney the credit for that goal after the Mata free kick. And it was a joke, obviously, but no, in the post-match press conference, David Moyes says Juan and Wayne practice those every day. It's like, seriously, he's like, he has become self-parody. We'll come on to the Bayern game in a minute, but at one point, the mics picked up him shouting, "Come on, Jonah, play!" when Phil Jones had a free kick, a throw-in. "Come on, Jonah, play." Brilliant. And then, I'm pretty sure there was a general consensus about this. He shouted, Danny Welbeck! What? I mean, I can see me shouting that randomly in the street at passers-by, but not David Moyes. What was he trying to do? And to go with earlier in the season, the Adnan get through the middle and score! Yeah, and you know, before the Bayern game, he very literally said, hopefully we'll try and do something in this game. And then you could see him catch himself and think, I've just said it again. What the hell's wrong with me? But yeah, the Newcastle game, thoroughly un-Moyes, thoroughly not what we're going to get. But part of me does still hope he'll learn. You know, because we are stuck with him. So part of me does hope he'll see, look how good we are when we play like that. I mean, all this has to be caveated, though, with the fact that Newcastle United are absolutely abject.
Well, they were abysmal, and they were abysmal in the area that United are weakest in central midfield. Gosling, very, very poor. Tiote, very, very poor as well. God forbid that we end up bidding for him in the summer, because there's certainly been rumours over the years about that. You know, Fellaini and Fletcher actually managed to dominate in the centre of the park. Eventually, I have to say, Newcastle kept the ball very well for about 35 minutes, didn't they? And then, United's sort of class told in the end. Smalling and Jones, very good in central defence, very comfortable in central defence. Valencia played a right back. It might be something we see more of him in the future. He's certainly no winger anymore, is he? Young started, as I said before. Mata absolutely superb in the number 10 role. I did enjoy this. Check out the heat maps, if you will, of Kagawa and Mata. You can't tell the difference because they just interchanged so beautifully.
That was the exact same against West Ham. Their pass maps look almost identical.
Yeah, it's there's no fixed position. And I think it only really happens when two of them play. And you can throw Januzaj into this. You know, Januzaj, Mata, Kagawa. Less so with Rooney, because he drops deep into central areas and actually causes problems in other people's zones, doesn't he? As Robin Van Persie likes to call it. But when there's one of them in there, United end up playing in a much more rigid formation. And when there's two, it really makes a difference to how United play. And I have to say, I think when United play like this, again, not wishing to sound like I have an agenda, I just don't think it's anything to do with David Moyes. From everything I've heard, they're not playing small triangles on the training pitch in order to try and build up this level of understanding at all. I
mean, you know, as we're talking about this, I can feel the rising frustration of the Moyes era, because it is heartbreaking to see a performance like that Newcastle performance, and to know that we're not going to try anything like that against Bayern Munich. I'm not saying that we should have played the exact same way. I'm not saying we didn't need to make significant tactical allowances for how good they are. But even, say, Arsenal away, well, we definitely could play against Arsenal away like that. But that's never going to happen under Moyes. And, you know, we'll come on to our Everton game, but I was watching Arsenal-Everton as Everton took Arsenal apart, and I don't know whether it was 2 seasons ago or 3 seasons ago. I don't know if you remember this game. It was a season where Everton had a really, really serious chance at 4th place. I think it was the season before last. And they were in that ding-dong battle with Arsenal. And a draw was absolutely useless to Moyes. You know, it did them no good at all, and yet he set up from the start to get a draw. And that's the game that I keep coming back to in my mind.
Well, that's so David Moyes, isn't it? And that's exactly what he did against Bayern. And I have to say, I almost lost the run of myself during that game, tweeting about Wayne Rooney still being on the pitch, and the fact that at 1-1 was the time that United had to go for it, because another goal then and Bayern would have needed 2 more, which actually they got anyway. But the point being that there was a time when it was blatantly obvious that United needed to go on the attack, and instead they still set up to park the bus.
Yep, so let's just talk about that Bayern game, because the Newcastle game was beautiful, but it was a beautiful distraction ahead of the main event. I somehow managed to feel for 20 minutes in that first half like we were going to do it, and then that sort of started to ebb away, and by the beginning of the second half I thought there was very little chance we were going to do it, and the Evra goal took me completely by surprise. What a 22 seconds that was. But yeah, I mean, you try and park the bus, eventually, more likely than not, one of the defenders is going to fall over. I said this to you on the phone the other day, but I don't share your profound sort of anti-football feelings about that kind of tactic necessarily. I'm not saying I don't share it at all, but it's not a matter of, I was going to say morality, but that's totally the wrong word because I know football tactics, but it's not even necessarily a matter of aesthetics, because I kind of appreciate it in a way. But what I do think is it almost never works. In order to get a bus parking situation to work, you need your strikers to be ready to take every single opportunity they get, or a higher percentage of them than normal, because they won't get as many as they normally do. And crucially, your defenders will have many, 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 many more opportunities to make personal mistakes. And the amount of people I saw saying it's not Moyes' fault, the players made personal mistakes for the goals, and I just wanted to say, but that's, you know, that's a...
Yeah, well, look, over the two ties, Bayern created 41 chances and United 12. Now, the fact that Bayern missed so many were blocked, and actually had very few, relatively speaking, to the total amount of chances they had actually on target, I think is a product of how many players United had in the blocks. There were loads and loads and loads and loads of shots that United blocked. Heroic, yes, but you actually only need one of those to fall to the right person or take a deflection or bypass the final lunging tackle for it to be a goal. 75% of possession over the two legs the Bayern had. Slightly less in the second leg at home, funnily enough. It actually went slightly more direct, which was a little odd, but they did for a while. It didn't really work in the first half. But 75% of possession, you're going to expect that the opposition to have 75% of the chances. Around about, which is what happened. And eventually, when you've got players of that kind of quality, it's going to work. Now, people moaned and moaned about United's bad luck and said the narrative going around that United somehow were only lost the first leg because they were unlucky. No, they lost the first leg because Bayern were wasteful, and I don't think Danny Welbeck finishing poorly when through on goal is unlucky. It was also wasteful, but the fact is that Bayern had 3/4 of the amount of chances in that game too. And look, the point being, I don't want to repeat my rant from last week, but you set up to park the bus. Most of the time you lose, and at the risk of sounding like Brendan Rodgers, there's some good numbers on this, and it's well over 70-odd%, isn't it, of teams who have more possession win, and there's a good linear relationship between how much possession you have and how much you win. Ergo, having the ball is good. Getting rid of it just to keep your shape, defensive shape, which is what United did twice in those two legs, is just asking for trouble.
Yeah, the Bayern game was kind of interesting because United were definitely playing two different formations. They were playing a 4-4-2, very, very much a 4-4-2 when they were not in possession, with one of the two, you could say 4-4-1-1, I guess. And then very much a 4-2-3-1 when in possession, with a very sort of flexible roles for Welbeck, Rooney and Kagawa. They both popped up. All three of them popped up on both flanks and through the middle on various different occasions. Valencia kind of sticking to the brief on the right wing. And actually, it was sort of quite effective. And if Wayne Rooney had been on his game, United could have done better earlier. I mean, not to be all Welbeck defence force about this, but Rooney owes Danny Welbeck a massive apology for slagging him off for missing glorious opportunities. I bet Danny Welbeck's not going to be in the press this week saying, Wayne Rooney will learn, partly because he knows Wayne Rooney is never going to learn. Moyes saying he would be mad to select, but in the this did my fruit. In the papers before the game, there's this quote, Moyes saying he'd be mad not to risk a player of Rooney's quality. Well, I think we all remember what happened last time a Manchester United manager risked an injured Wayne Rooney away in Bayern Munich. And the fact that Moyes kept Rooney, first of all, he shouldn't have played him because he wasn't fit, and he should have taken him off at the very latest after 60 minutes. To leave him on for the full 90 minutes was absolutely criminal idiocy, and all based on this insane cult of personality that Moyes has built up around Rooney, which is not matched by the truth of Wayne Rooney as a footballer.
No, it's not, and actually I just think it showed Moyes up for being an extremely weak manager. Look, the basic facts of this, he clearly wasn't fit, and as the painkilling injections wore off, he struggled more and more. After the game, Moyes said he was struggling to strike the ball, and the really bizarre thing, so not only did David Moyes make his substitutions very late, like very, very late, to the point where he couldn't affect the game anymore. But in the end, Wayne Rooney ended up dropping back into midfield, where he was so immobile that he couldn't give any protection to the back four anyway, right? So, not only did United effectively play with 10 men for a good, 45 minutes, I'd say, but the formation, including Rooney in midfield, left United so lightweight in that area that it actually contributed significantly to Bayern's victory. I think it's absolutely negligent of the manager to do that, and I kept going on about it during the game because I just couldn't believe what I was seeing. I just didn't make any sense to me. Moyes could have made a very decisive move at that key point at 1-1. And I have to say, I think that Guardiola would have done. He made the change and he made a difference. I know that Mourinho would have done. And the changes that they needed to make were to bring on Hernandez, Januzaj and Giggs. And those three would have made a big difference. And I would have done that for Valencia, Rooney and Fletcher. And I think United could have then taken the game to Bayern. Maybe it wouldn't have worked. Maybe it wouldn't have worked if United had got that second goal at 1-1. The whole nature of the game would change. But instead, Moyes sank back into, as you said, the cult of personality around Rooney, refused to pull him off, didn't make any changes until really late, showed himself up to be the most indecisive manager possible. He looked very naive. And then afterwards to come out and almost be smug about it. And think that, if it wasn't for the details, we would have won. As if to think that somehow his strategy was a winning one and it was just bad luck. And it just wasn't. And then, not only did he have a failing strategy, but when it came down to the little details that really make the difference in football, he failed to make the right decisions and he bottled it. And it was criminal.
Yeah, absolutely. At Callum Orr asking, is Moyes keeping Rooney on for 90 minutes and then saying it looked like he was struggling to strike the ball a new low for David Moyes? I'm not sure that it is. I think it's just maintaining his consistent low. And, I have to say that I think if he was saying all the right things in the press, I would feel very differently about him. That the kind of almost burning frustration comes from what he says as well as what he does, the way he tries to justify it, the way he, we gave it a good go, we tried it, I've really enjoyed being in this competition, well, great, I'm glad you've had I would really enjoy managing Man United in the Champions League for a season whilst simultaneously ruining the entire side. He's just a manager failing. And I think the only possible justification for keeping him at this point is we believe that he will stop being a manager who is failing in the near future. The idea that, it's been a near miss this season, but for a bit of unfortunate run of form at home, we'd be calling this a terrific season. Oh, we've got the best away record in the league. Yeah, yes, we have got the best away record in the league, and we have picked up a lot of points away from home against bad sides. And yes, that is a key ingredient of how you win the league. But that's been at the expense of everything else. And yeah, anyway, so sorry, yet another Moyes out ramble. But to go back to the Munich game, tactically it was sort of working, albeit very dangerously. But I did think it was kind of interesting that Bayern went so direct. And as you said, that wasn't working for them, was it, Ed?
No, it wasn't. And eventually they made the change, right? I mean, it was interesting that they were trying to get from back to front quite so quickly, and I think in the end they were putting the ball in a bit too early, and it just wasn't the Bayern that we expect to see this season as a result. And they made a change on 65 minutes, pulled off Mario Götze, put on Rafinha, swapped the formation around. By then, of course, it was 1-1 anyway. But the change, effectively won them the game because they redistributed how they were set up. I mean, it was a very odd formation anyway, basically playing two at the back, and Alaba and Philipp Lahm basically playing as holding players, Cruz dropping in, so they kind of had this 2-3-2 in Müller and Götze above them. Ribéry and Robben were very, very wide, and Mandzukic up front. It's a slightly odd formation. You don't really expect to see Bayern doing that, but they still dominated the ball. That final ball went in too early for the first 45 minutes, and I think when they finally sorted that out, they were completely dominant and created the chances that eventually won them the game.
Yep, so let's talk about that glorious 22 seconds of absolute bliss. One of my favourite Rankcast questions ever has come in this week. It's the question, what is the best 22 seconds of your life?
Oh, I don't think that's for a family audience, is it?
And this question from @Maria Giashvili. I mean, let's just say footballing life, I don't think that every goal is up there with the very best 22 seconds of my footballing life. I think if I'd been in the stadium, it would be. I was too busy being stunned, and by the time I'd really kind of inculcated the fact that they'd scored, so, didn't get to fully enjoy it.
Well, and Solskjaer has won it, and the 22 seconds after that, it was pretty bloody good.
Yeah, it was pretty great. I was in the middle of a row with someone as that happened, so I didn't get to properly enjoy that one. The Cantona goal in the FA Cup final against Liverpool, that was pretty great few seconds. But yeah, it was 22 seconds of bliss, and Patrice Evra enjoyed every second of it until he realised he still had to do some defending and completely lost Mandzukic. I mean, you can sort of put it down to the fact that he just scored and he was kind of elated, but you could also put it down to the fact that he's Patrice Evra, a player I deeply love, but he will do that. He will do that.
The ability to track a forward going past him has completely gone. I don't know whether it's his legs or his concentration or what, but yeah, he doesn't follow the runners anymore, and makes him a bit of a liability defensively. I think that'll be the last Champions League game we ever see Patrice Evra in, at least for United. Yeah, we might not see him in too many games for the remainder of the season. We'll see. I mean, it's not like Alex Butner's a suitable replacement, really. He's a very average player who's, when puts in a half-decent performance, everyone gets very excited about. But, he's Dutch mid-table standard, which is where we bought him from and where he should have remained. But he's at United. So Evra will get replaced in the summer, almost certainly. I would think he would be off. I know there's some umming and ahhing over whether he's going to get an extra year on the contract. It'll only be to be a reserve for somebody else, I would think, and he was either directly or indirectly involved in all three of Bayern's goals. But you know what? I agree completely with your statement when you said that, yes, there are individual mistakes, but it's pressure that creates the individual mistakes, and Bayern piling on that pressure created those mistakes. And, actually, there's some very fine goals too. Brilliant header from Mandzukic to get it back to 1-1. Fantastic run across the defender and flick from Muller to score, and a fine third as well. In the end, the quality told.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Evra's goal's interesting because sort of United's attacking interplay, and Kagawa, Welbeck and Rooney are basically all on the right as that, and Valencia, and then Valencia puts a fine cross in. Welbeck sort of breaks left, and the ball clears, but the Bayern defenders are so deep, ironically, and that they can't get anywhere near Evra. But that strike, I mean, what an incredible moment, and it was glorious to imagine that. It felt like some beautiful fairy tale was playing itself out, written in the stars indeed. But no, in fact, reality bit hard soon afterward. And that was it, and it's all over. Lots of plucky, brave, United did us proud. And I think to a certain extent the players did. That there certainly wasn't this thing that's been accused a lot of time this season of the players not looking interested and not looking involved. They were all definitely really up for it and trying their very best. But they were set out to fail. That's how I feel about it. And listen, as the old saying goes, don't at me, bro. You can think differently if you want to. That's absolutely fine, but you're probably not going to change my mind. I don't think Moyes deserves absolutely no credit. I think there was some attempt at some tactical sophistication, and you could say, well, it almost worked, and you could say that given the golfing class United had to defend. But as you said last week, we're not saying that the choices are either part of the bus or be Ozzy Ardiles. There's a middle ground where you are kind of compact defensively, but that doesn't mean 8 players in the box. Literally 8 players in the box from open play.
And I'll come back to this, right? So if that's your strategy at the moment where United had to attack, right? Had to win this game, remember, or score twice, at least twice. As it happened, had to score 3 times. So at the moment United had to attack, nothing happened. And Moyes only made the tactical switch, right, the formation switch, 15 minutes after Bayern had got that goal. And it was too late. It was way, way too late. The momentum had shifted. It was gone. And that was a crucial 15 minutes. And this is the difference between the top and someone else. Here's an analogy, right? So in business, people complain a lot about how much CEOs and executives get paid, and it's really deeply offensive when they're paid 1,000 times as much as the guy who cleans the office on many, many levels, right? But the reason they're paid that is because the CEO who makes the decision right 99% of the time rather than 98% of the time is going to save his company billions in the stock market, right? And that's why they get that money, right? That's why the top managers make the difference, you know? So would Mourinho have made that change earlier? Absolutely yes. Whatever you think about him, most definitely he's the most brilliant tactician in-game that I think I've ever seen, you know, way better than Ferguson at that. Would Guardiola have made a change? Yes, and he did, and it made a difference at the outcome of the game. Would many other managers have made a change and spotted the errors? I think so too. Moyes didn't, or if he did, wasn't bold enough to try anything different. You know, as I said, United had a plan A. I didn't agree with plan A, but even if you did agree with plan A, there was a point at which plan B had to come into play, or C, or D, or anything else, and none of it did until it was way too late, and that's a massive, massive failure.
Yeah, absolutely. And to, you know, not to be all Klopp worshipping about this, because Jurgen Klopp could easily come to United and fail. I don't think he'd be a guaranteed success at United. I happen to think he'd have a good deal more chance of being a success than Moyes, but that's by the by. They lost their tie against Real Madrid, and the best we can say about United is that the players did us proud, blah, 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 blah. Well, you know, the Dortmund approach was to absolutely try and leather the opposition, and that didn't work either, with the kind of sort of relatively similar gulf in quality in the playing staff, but they got to have, like, you know, a properly, truly glorious, heroic failure. You know what I mean? I'm not saying that's something to aspire.
Well, hit the post 3 or 4 times as well, didn't they? You know, and wasted some chances.
Yeah, missed an open goal.
You've got to say, but yeah, and you know they should have won that game 4-0. Basically, you know, they were completely dominant. But I tell you what you're saying, you know, their approach to having a very, very poor first leg, albeit with some key injuries and missing players and so on, their response to that very poor first leg was to go out and take the game to Real Madrid and to impose their style. And their style is so distinctive, that kind of very high tempo, high pressing game that they do. And they did have a big dip in the second half for about 15 minutes, and Madrid couldn't score. Gareth Bale guilty of missing a couple of very good chances, and you know Dortmund got over that and then had a very good last 20 minutes of the game. We were very unfortunate, but the key point is that their response was to attack. Their response was to impose their style on the opposition, not let the opposition dominate, not let the opposition dictate how the game was going to flow, which is what United did. So, you know, heroic defending, fine, but as I remember it, scoring more goals than the opposition is the way you win games. And simplistic that may be, but Bayern scored more goals than United because they had more chances and more possession, more of the game, and then completely dominated. And United never gave themselves the chance to score the goals to win that game.
Absolutely. So, I guess we should move on, as United have to do, and move out of European football. I mean, do you think we'll get back into Europe next season?
Yeah, you know, I don't think it's a foregone conclusion that United will go and secure all the players that they want. You know, clearly, sorry, that's stating the obvious, isn't it? You know, Moyes appears to be very confident that they've tapped up enough players around Europe that no one will, which is interesting in itself, no one will, you know, take United's season out of the Champions League, which I guess is how they're pitching it, into account. They can cope over a 4-year contract. They could cope with being out of the Champions League for one season. So I think United will purchase some players. I think they'll strengthen the squad. Given the quality of the squad already, that should be enough to get into the top 4. So I think United will probably qualify for the Champions League next season, just given the base that they're strengthening from and the type of budget they'll be spending in the summer. If they don't, of course, you know, that would be a huge, massive failure that would not be taken as seemingly lightly as the current management is taking David Moyes' failure this season. And what you said earlier in the piece is then relevant. So Moyes qualifies for the Champions League. That's the bar that is now set for him because the business plan requires that and requires a quarter-final appearance in the Champions League. And if he achieves that, it doesn't really matter whether United win the league or not. You know, I've said this for a long time, that United's business model is not predicated on winning loads of trophies. People don't get it, but I'm going to keep repeating it. It's not predicated on United winning loads of trophies. So I don't think for the Glazers it matters that much. And therefore, we could have Moyes for a long time.
The only bit of it that is predicated on United winning loads of trophies is the attraction to commercial partners, right? Even that is questionable when you think about Liverpool getting record-breaking shirt deals and stuff like that.
Yeah. I said what Edward Wood had said. I mean, this is why they're so keen to push their 659 million followers from that ridiculous Kantar survey. But yeah, it's about reach, not trophies. And if reach is affected by lack of trophies, then maybe they'll be concerned. But it doesn't appear to be.
But isn't brand association huge though? Isn't being associated with success as important to these brands as the number of people, a number of eyeballs that will see the brands? I mean, I don't know. I'm asking genuinely.
So I don't think so. If you look at one of the most open sponsors to talk about this was Aon, who talked a lot about how it enabled them to get a global brand. So it wasn't necessarily success per se, the association. It was the fact that they could reach people who understood the United brand and associated with it, and therefore were able to associate Aon with that brand. It's another leap again to say, well, people want to associate themselves with a successful brand, because United have built this reach through many, many years of, success, but also the mythology surrounding United. Remember, United were a global brand as one of the first global football brands, alongside Real Madrid and Barcelona, and everyone has tried to emulate that since. What the Glazers have done, just to finalise that point, is to exploit that for commercial gain in a way that the previous regime weren't able to do.
Yeah, absolutely, and I guess they're real, as you said, watch the stock price, because that'll be when the Glazers are really thinking about changing Moyes. I guess for now, I mean, there's no way he's gone in the summer. Can't see. Basically, he'd have to lose every game from here till the end of the season, and he's just not going to, because United will play with freedom, I would imagine.
I haven't got too many difficult games anyway. I mean, it's Everton away coming up. Yes, definitely United could lose that one, especially Everton playing some very nice football at the moment. But apart from that, there's Southampton, Norwich, Hull. That's a lot of teams there with nothing much to play for either. Sunderland, they're probably down anyway. So United could have a strong end to the season, and I think the mythology that surrounded this Bayern game, that United were plucky losers and we're on the way back, definitely means Moyes is safe. We'll see him 1st of August. Next year, the beginning of next season, definitely. Whether anything will change, aside from a few new players, is a very moot point.
This thing about us being plucky losers is interesting, because this time last season, we actually were genuinely plucky losers, against Real Madrid.
Well, yeah, and United were very, very cautious in the away leg, but actually took the game to Madrid in the home leg in a way that never happened in this tie.
And it's interesting because people have, I think I've definitely got it. I suspect you have too. You get oh, you wouldn't be criticising Fergie for this. And I think, have you not been listening to us for the last however many years? Because even after that game, I remember being pretty critical of Ferguson's explosive reaction to the nanny sending off, and how his kind of viscerality carried itself into the players, and the players were really shaken by that. And actually, if Fergie had managed to have a calm head in that moment, it might have done more good than his kind of cheerleading. But anyway.
Well, and back to my point about Mourinho, right? Mourinho made the change instantly. Modric was on, Real scored, and the tie was over.
Yeah, there you go. Absolutely. Right, so, okay, United are not going to change the manager, but presumably they... Oh, one tiny last point on the Bayern game. Does it bother you at all that Ryan Giggs is one Champions League appearance from equalling the all-time record, and United only made 2 subs in that game?
Yeah, well, it might fall into the conspiracy camp surrounding... Ryan Giggs and David Moyes at the moment, right? Xavi and Casillas are going to destroy that record anyway, right? They'll be playing many more games. Yeah. So Ryan wasn't about to own that record. I think he should have been on even age 40 for tactical reasons, let alone something around Moyes being petty.
Yeah, okay. So at Kostadin Stoylov says, with most senior pros going in the summer, how long do you reckon till we're back in the top four and challenging for the title? And I think those are two very different questions. We both suspect at this point that United will be back in the top four next season, but it's got to a point where I'll be absolutely shocked if we're challenging for the title next season.
Yes, I don't believe we'll be challenging for the title next season. I mean, it's very hard to say, right? Maybe United bring in 11 world-class players and they can't possibly fail even with David Moyes in charge. So assuming that doesn't happen, and there's some good strengthening, but Chelsea, City and Arsenal, I guess.
Well, mate, perhaps not them, mate.
Yeah, perhaps not them. Chelsea and City certainly likely to be very strong next season again, So I don't expect United to be challenging for the title next season, given the personnel we're likely to have and the management in place. I think we'll most likely be challenging for the top four next season. After that, who knows? I don't expect that David Moyes is the type of manager that's ever going to get United to a Premier League title, and because I just think he's too cautious in the key moments. I think there's a reason why he has a very poor record against the best teams. I think that will continue. But who knows? Maybe I'm wrong about that one.
Yeah, absolutely. And maybe he can do it without beating the best teams. Because the thing about Everton is they could never sustainably beat all the smaller teams as well. But with the United squad, he probably could sustainably, he could get 75 points against the bottom whatever percentage of the table and not even really bother with the big teams. But eventually you've got to win one of those big games if you want to win the Champions League or whatever. So who are we going to buy in the summer then, Ed? What's the latest? Tony Kroos, we've had two legs of trying to convince him to come. I reckon just Danny Welbeck following him around going, Manchester's brilliant, man. You've got to come for 180 minutes. It might have done the job.
Yeah, well, look, isn't it blatantly obvious that this is a Tony Kroos contract negotiation tactic?
Well, this is kind of interesting because everyone in the whole world thinks that, apparently, apart from people within the Bayern Munich situation. So Raphael Honigstein was saying on the Guardian Football Weekly the other week that exactly that everyone just assumes, of course, Bayern will pay him the money, but actually Bayern really might not do because they don't have the need to smash open their wage structure on Kroos.
Well, they wouldn't be. He's well down the list of how much Bayern players are paid. So if he paid Kroos the same as they're paying Ribéry and Robben, who aren't even the top earners, right? Then they're not smashing the wage structure at all. So I don't buy that one for a minute. I think they'll pay him in the end, and if they don't, well, maybe United will fork over the cash and the huge wages to get him. It seems unlikely, but I'm open-minded about that one. I didn't think Robin van Persie was going to join, and I was pretty surprised that Juan Mata did. So these things happen in football. Interesting thing about Kroos, he's obviously a very talented player, and he's super high quality on the ball. He doesn't half rotate possession slowly though, and I think that'll be an interesting dynamic. It just how successful he's likely to be in the Premier League and how it plays into United's pattern. I know I'm jumping a few steps ahead here, but let's just say United did sign him, play him in central midfield behind Mata and Kagawa and Januzaj and whoever's further, or Rooney at number 10. We might find that the ball is moving a little slower than perhaps players in the Premier League are used to, and in fact David Moyes is used to, because of course he likes that ball to be pinged out to the wings pretty damn quickly, but he's a smart enough player to adapt. But that would be my one observation about his kind of style.
So the fact that Moyes has basically said that he's been tapping up the best of European football, what do we think? Who's coming?
Well, I don't know. So I haven't had a good word on this one. So they have definitely been looking at a whole bunch of players across Europe, as we know. Go check out the Red Issue Sanctuary for the latest list of good gossip. I wouldn't want to undermine their actual proper work on getting that gossip, but there's some good ones. I know who I'd kind of like United to look at. I mean, going from the back to the front, there's quite a lot of need for at least two central defenders, right? And a left back, maybe two left backs, and probably two central midfielders as well, and likely a wide player. Maybe a striker if Hernandez goes as well.
We're going to get 3 players, that's my prediction.
Yeah. Well, look, we know that Rio is likely to go. We know that Vidic is definitely going. We've got to assume that Evra's going. I think Fletcher, there's a lot of talk about him not getting a new contract, although I think he's probably earned another one, don't you? And the Kagawa situation is interesting because although he's played recently, he certainly wouldn't have done if Van Persie and Rooney had been fit. Is he likely to stay? He's been criminally misused this season. What happens to Nani? Looks like he's going. Anderson's definitely gone. Got to assume, given they're Moyes type players, that Valencia and Young are staying.
Yay!
So yeah, two central defenders. Benatia from Roma is definitely available. He's going to be very expensive, and Bayern are sniffing around, so says rumour.
Keep saying he never wants to leave Italy as well.
Yeah, but Roma sell, so we'll see. He's not Italian, so I think dangle the right amount of cash, and I'm sure he'll be happy. You wonder what's going to happen with Dortmund as well. Is Hummels available eventually? It hasn't been in the past, but maybe a super player. Everyone apparently is after Mangala. I've seen less of him than I've seen of the other two I mentioned, and it looks like he's going to be very expensive. I'd expect United to not be in a bidding war for this guy. Backs, I have to say I like Ricardo Rodriguez at Wolfsburg a lot. I think he's a very, very good player, and Kagawa at Monaco, excellent in the French league this season. They've had scouts at Atletico this season a lot, looking at Felipe Luis, who's a bit older and probably a bit more expensive, and I'm not certain about him. I'd probably go for one of the younger guys, but who knows, maybe they're going to buy two. They've certainly watched Ander loads and loads. I mean, he's had a very good second half of the season. Looks like that might be a difficult deal again, so maybe they don't want to go there. Koke, they've looked at, fabulous player, growing with every game. Scored the goal to beat Barcelona, of course. So I guess that's off the top of my head. Sort of half a dozen players there, £250 million worth of spending, no problem at all.
I feel like Atleti's going to be a really hard club to buy players off this summer because, they might have just won the league. They might have just won the Champions League.
Yeah, but they always sell. They always sell.
Yeah, I suppose. But you wonder with Simeone, and it's a very different situation at Atleti than it's been for a long time.
But what you're saying then is the players would stay for much, much less money than they can get elsewhere.
Yeah,
right. I don't buy it. I think they'll sell, and I think they'll sell quite a few. The younger players. So Koke, they might not. They might be able to hang on to him for a bit longer. Diego Costa, he's almost certain to go, right? And maybe Felipe they'll cash in on because, I reckon they can pick up another left-back in Spain of very similar quality. Of course, one I forgot to mention, Moreno, outstanding left-back. It looks like he's on his way to Madrid, though, so probably not available to United.
No, we'll end up with Cohen Trau on loan or failing to sign him on loan again.
Well, he will be available, but, given his age profile, the wages he's on, the fact that he's basically failed at Real Madrid, I'm not sure it's the best purchase. I don't think it might be an upgrade on Evra now, but it's definitely not an upgrade on Evra of a few years ago. I think we'll be taking, sub-premium there, so if we're happy with that, fine, but he's not one of the world's outstanding left backs in my honest and humble opinion.
I guess we won't be investing in cover at right back because of the fact that Smalling and Jones in a purely technical sense can play there. It's really unfortunate. I mean, I guess it's just there's greater need elsewhere in the squad, but we really could do with another right back, couldn't we?
Well, could certainly do with another player. They keep talking about Santiago Arias, Colombian left back, plays in the Dutch league with PSV. Can't say I've seen a lot of him. I don't watch an awful lot of Dutch football now and again when I can't sleep, and which is frequent, mainly because I'm watching football. Work that riddle out, and I can't see United spending massive on Seamus Coleman, especially if Everton make the Champions League, which they might well do, given that they have all the momentum.
They have all the momentum, but that run-in is ridiculous compared to Arsenal. So, I mean, Everton are going to have to perform a lot better than Arsenal are going to have to perform in order to get into the Champions League. So I think they would still be outsiders, but not massive outsiders, but I still think the chances are Arsenal will sneak in there. So, okay, well, that's defence. What about midfield?
Well, I've talked about some of it. So I like Koke a lot. I think he's a really, really good player. And I think he's had a great second half of the season. Had a very poor first half. Looked like his kind of mind had gone somewhat. We're going for a wide player. I'd say that the player that's impressed most probably in the Spanish league, at least of those outside the real top sides, is Antoine Griezmann at Real Sociedad, who's been absolutely brilliant. A lot of people talk about Julian Draxler. I think he's a step below. Of course, if you wanted a kind of utility forward, you might go for Royce at Dortmund, who was fantastic coming off the left into a central position against Real Madrid. Absolutely brilliant. I mean, he would cost a huge amount of money, but would almost certainly be worth it. So any of those would be very nice. Thank you very much. Talking of that, could we just give Dortmund like our entire transfer budget this summer? So, like the 150 million for Hummels, Royce, and Klopp, and maybe another one. Just throw another player in there.
Gundogan. Andy 27p says, in respect to transfer targets this summer, do we consider Lallana from Southampton good enough for us? I think the good enough for us question is really interesting, because I think we've potentially have players in the side at the moment who are not good enough for us. But I think if Lallana was playing at one of the big clubs in Spain, most of us would be drooling over him. Probably. I
like him a lot as a player. I think he's a very flexible, technical player, can play in a lot of different positions, doesn't really feel like an English player, does he? Most definitely be an upgrade on Ashley Young in terms of quality, and Antonio Valencia, I like Tony V, but he's had a pretty stinker of a year, adding to the stinker of a year last season, so he can't beat the man anymore. Lallana's not a traditional winger by any means, so it doesn't feel like a David Moyes type player, but he would definitely be a good squad player for United. Would he make the top 11? Would he make the difference in a game away at Bayern? Not sure about that.
No. Okay, let's move on to some less serious Twitter questions. At registertan_ says, judging by Moyes' post-match comments on Rooney, do you think Moyes is actually a robot who is controlled by Rooney? This is a really interesting thing that I had not considered up to this point. It definitely, if he is a robot, he's got a few malfunctioning programs in his subroutines, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, well, Rooney's done the programming. Yeah, well, maybe. I mean, there's, Moyes' tongue is so far up Wayne Rooney's bum that, would only a robot do that, maybe.
At Follow My Trawler says, Juan Mata seems the most genuinely likeable United player since Ollie. Who are some other contenders? I watched a video of Juan Mata going around the Man United museum, and I was thinking, Mata's basically been brought in to replace Patrice Evra as player who gets it. Not necessarily all of the squad in that camp, although there are a few of them.
Judging by Manchester United's female supporter base, Juan Mata definitely gets it.
There's a few at United who I think are pretty committed to the cause, including, weirdly, Ashley Young, who, has ended up in the away end a few times and seems to be, really trying to be a proper Man United player in all but playing bit. He's not sort of that, but we'll just leave that to one side. Genuinely likeable United players. I think Patrice is right up there with genuinely likeable players.
He certainly is. Yeah. What are we saying? Like him as a fan, says all the right things. Yeah. Right. Patrice has some moral ambiguity going on.
Oh, really?
Of course. Wow.
I don't
know
the story
and all of that. So
I see. Okay, well that's always a knock against it.
But he gets it. And when he said all the right things. Juan Mata, his blog's great. It's great entertainment. Says good stuff every single week. When he plays in the centre of the park. At number 10, he's given the freedom and the support of his teammates around him. He's an absolutely fantastic, brilliant player too. Not so much when he's dumped out on the right wing and asked to lob balls into the strikers.
No. I'm trying to sort of rack my brains for other likeable players. I've got a big soft spot for Rafael da Silva. I mean, Danny, obviously that goes without saying. And David De Gea, very likeable. The De Gea Mata bromance is a thing of absolute beauty. This is kind of embarrassing. But when Mata scored the free kick and he starts running towards the bench against Newcastle, I was like, oh no, he's going to run and hug David Moyes. If Juan Mata hugs David Moyes, I'm going to have to rethink my entire worldview in the next 30 seconds. But fortunately, he was trying to hug David De Gea, making a beautiful moment even more beautiful. And so apparently that was because De Gea had said he was going to score a free kick, not because De Gea every day in training goes, Hey, Juan, remember that free kick? Remember that free kick I saved? Not because of that. At Kaimak says, let's all chip in to send Moyes on this interesting looking course at Harvard Business School.
Yeah, Alex Ferguson, now a lecturer in residence at Harvard. Yeah.
That'd be a heck of a course to go on, wouldn't it?
Yeah, if you could actually understand any of it, it would be brilliant stuff. Thing is, of course, it feels kind of antithetical, this, because I don't think there's anything in Ferguson's management philosophy that he is kind of structured in his own mind, let alone down in a sort of academic course. I think it was all just kind of instinct with Ferguson, wasn't it? Part of, well, at least, funnily enough, and with some irony, part of the spin that's come out of the club, of course, is there was very little structure behind the scenes, and they're trying to put it into place now.
Interesting. I think that his great strengths as a leader, I think it's very interesting to see him reflect on that. And I really love the thing he says about observation, because, one of the secrets of life is the more attention you're paying to the people around you in the moment, the more you have the capacity to learn, and it gives you profound insight to do that. I do think that's really interesting, and I think it's interesting that he sort of knows that about himself. And I thought that whole thing actually was quite interesting, the sort of self-knowledge. I was impressed by how structured Ferguson's thoughts were about himself. I mean, like he would care if I was impressed, but I just thought it was kind of interesting. So yeah, I bet it's a good course.
Well, anyway, so a good course coming up for United. I think we're planning on taking a break from the Rantcast next week. Just recharge the batteries heading into the final month of the season. So we'll preview the Everton game early, and I suspect that David Moyes is going to get schooled by Roberto Martinez, and Everton will dominate this game in the fashion that they've come to dominate so many games recently. Really magnificent season for Everton. I think if you took a straw poll of Everton fans right now, about 99.99% of them would say they had upgraded their manager over the summer, and David Moyes' mum would be the dissenter.
Part of me wonders, is there a sort of slight flash in the pan quality to this? It's all, it's great to give players who've been on a very kind of tight leash more freedom for one season, but sometimes that doesn't carry into the second season. So, reserve judgment to an extent. But I do think it doesn't speak well of Moyes, particularly how beautiful Everton look and how exciting and attacking. And, you get people saying, well, they've made good signings. It's like, well, yeah, that's because they got rid of Moyes, who was making not so good signings for such a long time.
Yeah, I know. It's a really bizarre argument. It's funny how you've reserved judgment on Martinez, but you've been very judgy about David Moyes. Interesting.
Yeah, but I do keep saying, yes, because I'm like emotionally involved in what David Moyes does, and I do keep saying I'm fully aware that I could look completely stupid for this. And I think maybe if I was...
For this?
I think maybe if I was...
You set him up.
If I was paying more attention to Everton and Martinez, maybe I'd be saying, like, oh yeah, everything looks right. And it kind of does, But anyway.
Well, it certainly looked right when they battered Arsenal last week. Not that Arsenal haven't been battered by every decent side in the country. Bar United.
This is the absolute... Well, they're not one of the decent sides in the country, that's why.
I'll set them up.
This is the nightmare scenario. That Arsene Wenger decides finally this is the summer to go, and they flipping get Jurgen Klopp. Oh my God. That would be so depressing.
Well, it's interesting that Louis van Gaal seemingly, so the rumours go, has picked Tottenham eventually. Sherwood's on the way out, and Van Gaal's going to sign that pre-contract, which means that he's given up on the United job. So I think that gives us a very good smoke signal that Moyes is in place. So yeah, if Klopp finally decided to go, and Arsene Wenger might still go, not signed that new contract yet, although it always happens very late. You'd think Klopp and Arsenal would be a very nice fit.
Yeah, that would be terrible. But yeah, the Everton game, to have a bit of a preview, it's a long way off. We don't know what will be going on with fitness. I'd imagine it's unlikely Van Persie will be back before that one.
It doesn't look like it, and you'd think that there's a fair chance Rooney isn't either, given that he played 90 minutes on what is at least a badly bruised toe and quite possibly one with a fracture, depending on which rumours you believe.
And if Rooney doesn't play against Everton a week and a half after that fixture, it really makes keeping him on for 90 minutes look even more ridiculous, as if that was possible, given how ridiculous it looked in the face of how Rooney was playing. But yeah, so the likelihood is we might see something akin to the Newcastle lineup. But you do wonder if Moyes will look at Everton and go, oh, wait a minute, they're good, I better play Young and Valencia, metaphorically or actually.
I think United were set up in the way that they generally set up away from home. I mean, and not Bayern away or Bayern at home. I think United will go, depending on who's fit, we'll go with the kind of lopsided 4-2-3-1 that has been commonplace for most of this season, or 4-4-1-1, depending on how you look at it. So, yeah, one of our more traditional winger types will play, and maybe another won't. Of course, given that it doesn't matter that much anymore, these games, I wonder whether this is now a chance to give some minutes to some players who haven't had much time on the pitch. Hernandez, Welbeck to a certain extent, at least in his favoured position up front. Januzaj, who's been overlooked for a lot of games recently, hasn't he? Kagawa, most definitely. It's the time to play Smalling and Jones, for sure. Not a lot of point in playing Vidic and Ferdinand anymore, since they're all going. I could say the same about Evra, of course, although there isn't much of a backup there. Butner may or may not be at the club next year. He's certainly not United quality, so he's not the long-term option there. Same in goal, no point changing anything around. But, there's a few players who deserve a few minutes, and given that it doesn't really matter all that much for the season to come, it'd be nice to see them get some time.
I mean, I think it's very unlikely that he'll do anything other than play what he perceives to be his best 11, with maybe a tiny bit of an exception, because I don't think he can... I think the way Moyes' brain seems to work... He's not going to see it like that. He's going to see it as like, oh, wait a minute, I need to show I'm still going for this, still competing to finish as high in the league. And
that's a man not in control of things, right?
But he is a man not in control of things. That's what I'm saying, is that what's going to happen isn't what should happen. Because I think you're absolutely right. What should happen is we play a wide range of players, especially the younger the better, but I'm not sure that's what he's going to do.
Yeah, I think you're probably right. I mean, it comes back to my, kind of the most pithy assessment I kind of had in my mind of the Bayern game, that Moyes had two plans. One was to not lose, and the second was to not lose too badly. And it's the second one that dominated in the end. And that may well be the case at Everton too.
That's really got me, that has. Yeah, that's exactly what happened. Talking of things that really got me, we've had a Twitter question from some guy called @UnitedRant saying, when will the jokers who present this terrible podcast retire #Muppets?
Retire! That was rubbish! That was rubbish! I actually saw the Muppets this week, which prompted...
That was so good, wasn't it?
Yeah, I quite enjoyed it. My 9-year-old didn't enjoy it quite as much as I did. It's strange.
Oh, I've seen that in the cinema twice so far. If you want to find out where my comedic influences come from, that's pretty much the size of it. But yeah, the answer I think to that question is eventually, surely. And also, I didn't realise retirement was an option. Are we allowed not to do this podcast anymore?
No, we have fans.
Okay,
or,
there you go.
Or haters, probably in equal measure.
People that tolerate us. So we're not retiring, but we are taking a week off, partly because, there's no game in between now and when we next record, so we can sometimes stretch that. But given that between now and the end of the season there's absolutely no meaningful football, every single one of our podcasts is going to be stretched. At some point we'll just be taking ridiculous hypothetical Twitter questions for the whole entire thing, which actually kind of...
Well, given we've managed to stretch out this particular podcast to well over an hour, I think we could quite manage that. But no, you're right. Taking a break next week, and we'll try and find something to talk about for the rest of the season.
And talking of ridiculous Twitter questions, just one more before we go. Hannah May J says, which current United player would you wine and dine, and which would you dump by text message?
I thought the last part of that question was going to be something very different from it.
So I reckon, right, this is just want to make this clear, this is just from a football perspective. I think you'd maybe want to wine and dine De Gea, because we want to keep him laser focused on staying at United. You know, like the best news ever, Barcelona getting a transfer ban, because it means they can't buy De Gea for at least 18 months. And then the player that you dump by text message is obviously Rooney.
Oh yeah,
just so easy, that one.
You're dumped, lols.
Yeah. Hey, Wayne, do you want picking up in the morning, pal? Well, you don't need picking up in the morning because you're not coming to training.
Very good.
Prediction for the Everton game?
1-1.
All right, that seems reasonable. I will go 2-1 to Everton.
Ooh, you're so negative, Paul. That's the problem with you.
Clearly.
Half quarter full.
Yeah, so we'll be back the week after next to look back on the Everton game and preview whatever the heck meaningless football there is left in the season. In the meantime, have a really good couple of weeks. If you want to get hold of us, you can get me at UTD Rantcast. You can get Ed at United Rant. That's on Twitter. If you want to get us on Facebook, it's facebook.com/United Rant. And you can get us at unitedrant.co.uk, where you can leave comments, friendly ones preferred, and unitedrant.co.uk/donate if you want to help with the bandwidth costs. Thank you so much to everyone that's done that. You are making it possible for us to do this show without it costing us a fortune. So,
and without us spamming you with adverts, which could. Well, maybe we'll do that anyway.
No,
we won't.
Try new and improved Moyes. It won't be as terrible next year as it was this year. Brackets.
Hopefully.
Brackets, terms and conditions apply.
All right, very good. Well, that's a very long podcast this week. I guess we had United's biggest game of the season to talk about. It didn't work out the way that we hoped. Probably worked out the way that we expected. So we have 5 games between now and the end of the season, and a long summer break. Well, and the World Cup, I suppose. But in the meantime, have a really great week off. We will be back in 2 weeks with the next Rantcast. Have a great one.
This podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.